Weaver here, and today we're going to talk about the Columbian Exchange. So we've already talked about before the impact of Columbus coming over to the New World, his expeditions, and everything else, and whether or not you agree that he is a wonderful person or not, it doesn't really change the fact that his expedition had a huge impact on the world around him. So we call this impact of what he has the Columbian Exchange. It is really the transfer of ideas and crops and animals and everything else from the old world to the new world, and then vice versa from the new world to the old world. It's not a one-way street. This exchange back and forth is going to radically change the world in which we live in, and really everyone on it. It doesn't matter what continent you're from, as long as you're not from Antarctica, which nobody is, you were impacted by the Columbian Exchange. So, why does this change everything? Well, it changes people's diets. It changes how they view the world. It changes how money is spent. Every aspect of people's lives will go through some sort of change during this period. The dynamics of just trade itself will change. Who profits, who doesn't, who gets anything, who lives are longer. All of these things will be impacted by the influx of stuff from the New World and the stuff from the New World being kind of adapted. So let's break this down. Here's a graphic of the different things that move from either Europe and Africa to the New World or from the Americas to Europe and Africa. And we're going to break this down to two different pieces. What went from Europe and Africa and Asia to the Americas, and then what went from the Americas back, and how did those influence things? So this graphic gives you a lot of it right here, but I'm going to go to a list, this next slide here, and break down some of these individually. I mean, some of the stuff that goes to Europe from the Americas is going to be, nice, but not game-changing. Like the pineapple. It's neat, but it doesn't change everything, nor does the avocado, as wonderful as it is today. It doesn't have a dramatic impact on lives of people back then. But the tomato, can you imagine life in Italy today without the tomato? Without the ability to create a marinara sauce or any of the pastas that become iconic to Italy? The peanut dramatically changes things in Europe. Extraordinarily cheap food that can be used for animals. But more important than any of those are really going to be three extraordinarily important crops: the potato, corn, and tobacco. Tobacco has become one of the world's greatest and most important cash crops. It's not good for you, it's awful, but it's addictive. And it becomes one of the key pieces of the American agricultural experience. Growing tobacco is extraordinarily profitable. And one of the best parts about it, if you're a businessman, is that people are chemically drawn to using it again. So there will be a lot of money made off tobacco. Corn is going to become probably the single most important feature of diet for animals in Europe. While in the United States, it becomes one of the key pieces of our just normal diet. Can you imagine living a life without corn, without popcorn, without the various things that corn create? Corn starch, ethanol, which is used to run your cars. This is insane. But more important than any of those is going to be the potato. The potato is an extraordinarily nutrient-rich crop. It is easy to make, be farmed in tons of different environments, and it's going to make life extraordinarily different in places around the world. The Irish will make the potato the core piece of their diet. The average Irish person in the 1700s or so consumes about 10 pounds of potatoes a day. We know the impact it has in Russia because, welcome to the world of vodka, made from potatoes, but also in Asia. The sweet potato that is brought from the New World and eventually makes its way to Asia becomes one of the most important crops for the average peasant in China. It's very nutrient rich, and it's something that people could have without having a lot of money. It's easy to make. It's very cheap. So it's going to literally keep millions of people alive in Asia. On the flip side, from Europe and Asia and Africa to the Americas. Some again, it's going to be basic things that we think are kind of nice. The banana will come to the New World. That's great. Peaches and pears, awesome, wonderful. But the game changers are really going to be things like wheat, which is one of the most important crops in the United States today. Can you imagine the United States without wheat in Kansas and Nebraska? It is the breadbasket of the world for a reason, because wheat has been brought over here. But much bigger than wheat, than any of the other vegetables and fruits that come over, are the new animals that come over. From the old world, we'll get things like pigs and cows, and really the game changers, horses. Horses didn't exist in the America prior to Columbus's expedition to the New World. The introduction of horses is not only going to make life good for the colonists that are living here, but for the natives that survived their first interactions with the Europeans. They can now go from being almost exclusively pastoral and gathering things and farming to now being able to hunt things like buffalo, bears, other large game that is significantly better for them profit wise. There's also one other massively important uh, feature of the Columbian Exchange, and that is one we've already talked about a little bit in the past, but it's disease. We see the transfer of diseases from the old world to the new world, and actually some from the new world to the old world. We know about smallpox, we know about the measles, about the chickenpox. What that happened when it came from Europe and Africa to the new world is it devastated populations here. They weren't prepared for it, their bodies weren't designed for it. But on the flip side, we also see syphilis go from the Americas to Europe, and the impact of that is huge. Most likely, Henry VIII died from syphilis. There are various other European monarchs who live as well. And a lot of political unrest happens because of this disease that goes to Europe. So I guess it's a little bit of a two-sided weapon for the New World as well, too. But what does this look like outside of the actual exchange of stuff? Well, we see the creation of the global trade system for the first time. It's not just a trade from like Europe to Asia where you have next to each other continents, or from Europe to Africa where there's really not all that much space in between. We now see a truly global trade. And it's built around the concept that we call mercantilism today. That these colonies in the Americas are designed for the purpose of making money for their quote unquote mother country. As we see the illustration on the page right here, you see this image of what's supposed to be the British Queen, and she is trying to decide whether she wants raw materials, foods, or gold and silver from her various colonies. Or she could take all three, who knows? The benefit is that the mother country can have all of those things. This concept of mercantilism is going to be kind of the framework in which all the relations between the colonies and Europe are going to be designed around. Gold and silver goes to the mother country, goes into the treasury, allows them to spend money. Trade is designed around the European nations being able to sell more things, whether it's to their colonies or to other nations, more than they have to bring in. So they can make money off of this. And then also, they will take in these resources from the colonies and then use them to make manufactured goods, cloth, furniture, anything, and then sell that back to the colonies. Huge profits can be made out of this. This is what we call capitalism, an economic system that's designed around acquisition of wealth, private ownership of stuff, using what you have to make more stuff. It's all about getting that trade advantage. I want to make more than I have to spend. And companies will design their entire economies, entire their policies, everything around this notion of making money. And they're good at it. They make a ton of money. One of the best ways to do it is through the joint stock company. We talked about it a little bit when we talked about the Dutch East Indies. These joint stock companies are a great way for people to get involved in economics back then. They didn't require nearly as much money because a bunch of people got together, and your losses were cut only to the amount of money that you put into your business. If you didn't put a lot of money into it, you couldn't lose it. And that was good. It made a lot more people willing to invest. And this is going to be the backbone by which colonies are going to be built. Because colonies are expensive. They're dangerous. You had a really high chance of all of your money dying, whether it was going across the ocean and something happening to the ship of the colonists themselves. They make it to the New World, a harsh winter wipes them out. They're attacked by native peoples. They're attacked by other Europeans. All these possibilities existed, and people died because of that. One of the greatest examples of failed colony is the colony of Roanoke. Roanoke was going to be right off the coast of North Carolina, and things were good. A British ship left, going back to receive more resources. The colonists were good. The city was developed. Things were on its way. By the time they came back, everything was gone. The city itself was still there. The colony was there, but all the people disappeared. And we have no idea what happened. Were they killed by natives? They just go on a walk and never return? What happened? We don't know. But that's money that's gone. It's just an example of the way these were really dangerous exploits. So what is the impact of this? Well, some nations are going to get really, really rich. The French, the English, the Spanish are going to make a ton of money. In fact, the Spanish will make so much money it actually destroys their entire society. But that's a story for next year. The breakdown, though, is that the money doesn't go to everyone. It's really going to kings who get real rich off of taxes. And this is going to set us up for the next age of European history we know as the age of absolutism, where kings are going to have so much money they could actually become involved in every aspect of human life in their kingdom. That's a product of the amount of money they made in the New World. Also, merchants have an opportunity to get a lot richer. People who could become involved in those joint stock companies, who could invest money into it, will become really wealthy. But the average person in Europe doesn't get wealthier. They don't get richer. Their lives don't dramatically change. They stay pretty much the same. The money never makes it down to them. The one benefit they do get is that there's more food. And not only is that there's more food, but it's better food, more nutrients, healthier diets, and because of the population of Europe skyrockets. In the 300 years after Columbus's exploits, 1492, population of Europe will go from about 80 million people to 180 million. It means it's over a 200% increase. That's insane. And it happened because people had food. Like, they could afford to have more kids because they weren't starving to death. Back in the colonies, though, there was a different story. The colonists will eventually become really frustrated with the fact that they can never seem to get ahead. Everything they do is about benefiting people back home. But what about those people who are struggling on the front lines, who are trying to build these colonies in harsh environments, who are trying to deal with people attacking them? Well, their lives don't really get much better. Everything that they make goes back to Europe and then is resold to them at a higher rate. So a lot of animosity is built. People will become frustrated. They begin to protest. They begin to get angry. And you should kind of recognize where this image is from. Because a Stamp Act, a Tea Act, a Sugar Act, those are key pieces that eventually led to the creation of this country. Have a great day.